In this episode, we're talking about mental health. I'm Claire Morton.
And I'm Gemma Ray, and we're going to be sharing our own stories and our own journeys about mental health, talking about the stigma, the science, and some amazing tips and techniques that you can do right now to feel less stressed, a little bit less anxious, and hopefully a lot calmer. So let's get honest about mental health, which is, mega important. Or I heard this the other day, Claire. Somebody talked about mental health and emotional health being two different things. What's your opinion on that?
Okay, so for me, mental health is all around your psychological health.
Yeah.
I physically have to touch my head when I do that. And emotional health. Emotional health, it's all about the heart space.
Right. Claire's touching her boobs right now for our listeners.
It's like the mind-body connection. So I do think you have good mental health and you are in touch then with your heart and your emotions. Obviously, we've all got mental health, which I know we're going to go into. We've all got mental health, whether it's poor, whether it's good, whether it's in the middle. We do have good and bad days, and then it's that whole thing of, usually in my head, when you've got good mental health, you've got good emotional health, because thoughts create emotions.
Of course. Yeah.
So I do see them as separate, but then bringing them together makes that person more whole. Because then you've got spiritual as well, haven't you? Which I think them two combined, in my opinion, creates a spiritual love for yourself and self-care, self-love, so that you're then able to give to others, because you are giving from a person who loves themselves to be able to love others.
I know
Is that a bit deep?
No, it's not deep at all. No, you put your goggles on, get yourself in the deep end, get your swimming cosy on, lass. No, I love it deep. I love it when you go deep. But no, I'm not there yet. I know I'm not. We were having a chat about this actually the other night, because we were talking about our personality types, and I feel a little bit like I've turned off my intuition and my spiritual side over the last year, because I'm just trying.
Why do you think that is?
I'm in a period of creation and keeping my promises to myself. I've talked about this before, where I keep myself accountable using various different things, which is actually all part and parcel of mental and emotional health for me, because they are the things. Me trying to be a little bit better every day is better for me and my mental health than me. I talk about this a lot. Sometimes for people, the definition of self-care is a bubble bath and a Netflix binge, guilt-free. For me, the definition of self-care is self-discipline and keeping my promises to myself. Yeah. Because when I keep my promises, I've got self-trust. That self-trust has changed my life massively over the last couple of years. And I think when I look back, a lot of my mental health issues had been caused because I'd completely broken that trust with myself. I didn't trust myself at all anymore. And when you lose that, lose that aspect of yourself, it's a bit of a tricky place to be.
What does, when you said you didn't have the self-trust, what do you mean by that? What were you doing, or what were you saying to yourself to not trust yourself?
It was sometimes the stupidest, smallest things, which I can now look back and realise, and a lot of it stemmed from procrastination. So I've always worked in jobs and industries that are very deadline driven. So if it's in broadcasting, journalism, PR, marketing, you're often working to a deadline. There's an article getting printed, there's somebody's going to be on the radio or the telly, and you've got to work fast and you've got to work hard. So it's quite difficult to work in a systematic way when your life is ruled by deadlines. Whoever's shouting loudest, whoever's deadline is closest, that's who you're doing the work for. So I felt sometimes like those projects that didn't have that urgent critical deadline just got moved and pushed on and on and on, to a point where then they become so critical that I would work through the night. And so I always talk about this, like the future me. I can do the future me a favour by doing the stuff I've promised to do today, rather than put it off till tomorrow. And honestly, that self-trust exercise can start with something as stupid as, when I take those clothes out of the washing machine, I'm going to put them on the maiden, and they're not going to stay in there for 3 days and then smell of dead dog.
Yeah.
Right?
Where I have to wash them again.
I've got to wash them again. How many what's your record? I'm 6 times on washing the same load of washing.
Oh, I'm not that bad.
Honestly, terrible. So, but you know, like when you say to yourself, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
And then for me, my washing machine is near the dog bed. I put the dogs to bed and I see it and it's like, oh, I've not done it. I'll do it tomorrow. When you do that, so often and so much, you create something in your subconscious where your brain goes, I can't trust you anymore. How many times have we said diet starts Monday?
Yeah.
Gym regime starts Monday. And then when it doesn't, you're telling your brain, oh, you've not done it. So then the next time you say to yourself, diet starts Monday, your brain goes, yeah, whatever, mate.
Laughs.
You're going to fail anyway.
Yeah.
What's the point? You're going to fail anyway. And I was completely stuck in that spiral of always making these promises to myself and then
And
just
never
not following
keeping them.
through. And they built and built and built over a time and a lot of other things.
Does that come from a space of because you were too busy saving other people?
Yeah.
And not looking after yourself?
Absolutely. And, you know, what's that wanky phrase alert?
Oh, God.
Fit your own oxygen mask first.
Yeah.
You know, we're all,
You can't pour from an empty cup.
there's lots of
Yeah,
those. And
yeah.
we are guilty of putting
Yeah.
other people and other people's needs and, again, deadlines, other people's deadlines ahead of our own. I wasn't very good at boundaries. I wasn't very good at saying no. I'm better now. Better at doing that, but it's been a long, hard 4 years of going through my own mental health journey that's been difficult.
Yeah.
And so that's mine. I talked about that in our very first episode. I had a nervous breakdown in the autumn of 2016. And we'll talk about that in a minute, about how that presented, because I'm often asked, how did you know you'd had a nervous breakdown? Because I didn't get medically diagnosed as having a breakdown. And I was 34 at the time. And I know for you, Claire, because we talked about this before this episode, yours started a lot earlier for you, didn't it?
Yeah. 17 I was when I felt like I was losing the plot. I felt like I always remember I was on holiday in Tenerife on my first girls' holiday. And I had this like out-of-body experience when I was in a bar in Tenerife. I can't remember the name of the bar.
Was it Lineker's?
No, it wasn't.
Bobby's.
Bobby's, it was.
Probably Bobby's.
Bobby's or Busby's, not there anymore. And I wasn't sure whether someone had spiked me drink or it was like an awakening. I don't know whether it was, I was on my first girly holiday. I was away from home without my mum and dad, and I was in a strange place, and it was like, oh my God, I am on my own in a strange country with my friends. And I felt like I'd come out my body and I was looking down at my body in this nightclub, and I'd only had two, peach schnapps and lemonade. Whether someone had spiked me, I don't know. And it panicked me, and I was like, I've got to go home. And I remember it really vividly. So the girls were like, what's the matter? I was like, I don't know. I just need to go back to the apartment. So I went back to the apartment, and inside my head, I started saying, this is it. I'm losing the plot. I'm going insane. I'm going crazy. So I ended up coming home a week early. We'd gone for 2 weeks. The three of us flew home, and I spent, must have been 6 to 8 weeks off work. I was a travel agent on my YTS at the time, and my mum had to stay off work with me because I was just convinced, because of this out-of-body experience, that something was going on in my head. So it was more like maybe panic attacks and stuff like that, but the stories I was then creating in my head of, I'm going to end up going to a psychiatric hospital, they're going to end up locking me up, and then that would create more craziness. And I don't know where it comes from. Well, actually, I do know where it comes from, because I've got a lovely, gorgeous human being in our family, my cousin. And he's been diagnosed, got schizophrenia. And he's just one of the most loveliest people that you could ever meet. And he's now 48. And he was diagnosed with that when he was 16, I think it was. And he was due to go to Oxford. He was really clever. He was really good at sports. And obviously all that changed when this happened. And I don't know whether that was in my head, that was in the family. And I started, but it's that whole thing of creating the stories and believing and living in that. In my head, I was going crazy. crazy. So there was points where I'd go, I think I just want to die because I don't want to put up with this. And then it was the time Prozac was like the big drug to help you.
And I've heard of Prozac being talked about in the media, in films and on TV. What actually, for somebody like me and somebody who might be listening thinking, what actually is Prozac? What is it? What is it for?
Yeah, and so it's to help you obviously with your mental health. It's that drug. And I don't even know if Prozac's still going now, because there's loads of other medication that is given to people to help them. So you've got like sertraline, I know that's one, and I know a few of my friends are on different ones, but it's supposed to give you that balance back in your brain, that chemical balance back in your brain. However, science is now saying that it's not a chemical imbalance, it's actually the thoughts that you tell yourself that creates the condition and the poor mental health. And it's that whole spiral of that, or what's happened to us in our lives, and then the stories that we create. There's new science now saying that it's not a chemical imbalance, it's actually the stories that you tell yourself. But that's a whole other ball game. And that's why I got into meditation, because I've been on medication. So I was on Prozac. I was only on Prozac for a couple of weeks, and I was like, I don't want this, I don't need it. I was only 17. And I didn't feel like I needed it, so I went for counselling. Did it help though?
Did you feel like...
I didn't give it the chance because I didn't want to be on it. So I did go for counselling at the time, and it was the counselling I felt was very much around, why do you feel like this? Is your mum and dad being bad to you? Have you been abused? And it was all, I was like, no, I've had a lovely childhood. Nothing's really sticks out to me, apart from maybe being left out when I was like 4 or 5 or 6 in primary school, and I didn't like feeling left out, and that's why I always included people, but nothing. So I did some counselling, didn't really do much. However, getting into personal development at the age of 23, 24, and learning about stuff and being introduced to Eckhart Tolle, the power of now and all that, and the present moment and all that stuff. It's been a massive journey over the last 20 years, but now through meditation, yoga, NLP, retraining the brain, and knowing that I create what I think and my emotions, that's got me to a place of real like presence. And so everything that goes on outside in real life, a lot of people getting really anxious about, another lockdown, about COVID, and really stressed. And I speak to friends who are like really anxious about schools closing again and jobs. And for me, it's like, well, are you okay today? Because if you're okay today, you're all right.
It's often the thought of what's going to come. And Eckhart Tolle talks about living in the now. Actually, the only moment we ever have is right now. Yeah. You can't change what's happened in the past. You can't control what's going to happen in the future. And you were saying there, it's the thoughts that create those feelings. And I was really lucky. I went to a meditation retreat at the what's it called? It's in Cumbria. It's a Buddhist amazing spiritual temple place that me and you should definitely go and spend a weekend there.
That would be amazing.
And the monk who led the weekend talked about that it's our thoughts that are the problem. It's our attachment to the meaning behind the thoughts that are the problem. And he used a great example, which I love talking about. So he said, imagine it's the middle of the night. You're on your way home. You're on your own. It's absolutely pouring. It's thunder and lightning. It's freezing, and your car breaks down. He said, what is the issue and the problem here? Is it the car breaking down that's the stress? Or is it your thought about being late, being scared that you're on your own, getting wet, being cold, not being rescued, being in the dark? It's all of those thoughts about what could happen if I'm stuck here for hours, or the judgment of other people because I'm going to be late, or it's that. That's the bit that causes the stress, not the actual act and the event of breaking down. And he did use another example, which does make me a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to talk about it because this podcast is about honesty.
It certainly is.
And he used the two examples of if somebody is attacked and stabbed, and a surgeon takes a knife to your body to remove an organ for your health, is it the act of the stabbing that causes the problem, because actually the two things really are the same thing. Is it the meaning behind it, and actually the intention behind it? And that is something that makes me incredibly uncomfortable, mainly because I'm part of a knife crime awareness campaign called In Memory of Colin McGinty, and I know that amazing young man suffered the most horrific and tragic death. So when I was in this meditation centre and he used this story as an example, it makes me feel uncomfortable and it makes me squirm. So that's why I use it in this example, because it is the meaning that we place behind things.
Behind the act,
Behind the act. And so I think for mental health, for a lot of people, that's what happens. We often will create stories in our own mind, whether you believe that is the issue or whether it's a chemical imbalance. I know there are different studies for lots of things these days.
I'm not saying that.
But yeah, you're right. A lot of my times of really poor mental health have been because I've been stressing and trying to control what's going to happen in the future, and it's just not possible. It just isn't possible at all. But I also think that, you know, you were talking there about being 17 and being on Prozac, and you only did it for a couple of weeks. You didn't want to be on it. Back then, there was a lot of stigma attached to mental health. It's not like it is. And we're still not there. I must say we're still not there right now. But it was different back then.
And I didn't tell anyone the way I was. Only the people that I worked with knew. And two friends, and never. And I didn't talk about this for years. I would be really ashamed of it.
It's
like, no, we need to talk about this because it happens.
It does. And a lot of people say to me, you know, you say you had I called it a mild nervous breakdown. I didn't go to my doctor when this happened because I felt embarrassed, because I felt like I couldn't cope, because I was somebody who thought that mental health was an attention-seeking excuse. I really did. I didn't think depression and anxiety existed. And then, you know, I talked about it in our last episode. I had my breakdown, and my breakdown presented the day after my biological father's funeral. My head felt like it was so noisy. And I know that it wasn't voices, it was just the whirring of thoughts, regrets. I was stuck in this, and it wasn't depression and it wasn't anxiety. It was a proper present moment of, where do I go from here? I'm so stuck. I'm so sad and full of regret for everything that's happened and not happened. And how am I going to move forward? And I was trying to take my son to school. It was the day after his birthday. He was, oh my goodness, he was only 5 years old. He was in reception. I was trying to be a good mum. It was still in that first term of going and doing school. And I just turned around to my husband and said, please, can you take him to school? I can't do it today. And my husband leaves quite early for work. And he was like, no, Gem, I can't. I've got a big job on today. I was like, please, 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 can you I can't do it. I can't face people today. Please take him to school. And don't think he realised how bad I was, because we'd done the funeral the day before. Yeah. You know, right, come on, let's crack on. You know, he wasn't in your life a lot, because I had a lot of guilt grief, because I was grieving for a parent who hadn't been in my life for 30 years, but it was the little girl inside of me that was grieving for him. So please, can you take him to school? Can you take him to school? No. And I just remember my head wouldn't stop. And we live in a very old cottage with very solid walls, and I put my back against the wall and I slightly tapped my head backwards on the back of the wall, and that was like, ooh, that provided a bit of relief. So I did it again, really hard, and then I slid down the wall and ended up in like the fetal position, holding my knees, and I was just cracking my head back harder, faster, because I just wanted all the thoughts to stop. And Sean walked in and was like, what are you doing? And he picked me up. And that was the point where he kind of put me in bed. And he did. And he took over and he took my son to school. But that's how it presented to me. That was the point where, ooh, this just isn't right.
Isn't right, yeah.
And actually, if he hadn't have stayed with me that day, I just wanted my head to explode. Yeah. That's what I wanted. And I suppose at that point, I had empathy for people who self-harm. Yeah. I could understand why people do that.
Release, isn't it?
It's a release of, there's so much pressure going on.
Yeah.
And just really, really tough and really, really difficult. And there, I still didn't go to the doctor. I don't know now, like, whether if I'd have gone, would that have helped? I'm not sure.
Well, this is the thing as well about, do you have to go to the doctors? I mean, again,
I really don't know.
It's about, some of us have got great supportive networks, and I think as long as you've got that support and that, you know, that understanding, you know, you could have gone the doctors and they could have gone, right, let's put you on this, let's put you on that, send you wherever. How would that have helped? I don't know.
A part of me regrets it. A part of me wishes I had. A part of me thinks, would I have been better quicker? Would I have got over this quicker? Because it took me a good 3.5, nearly 4 years to sort it out. And it's only in the last, 10 months where I've finally gone, yeah, I feel great. But that's because my whole brand is about self-discipline and stopping procrastination. Actually, the self-care side of things ticks off that mental health box. There are a lot of things that I do to recharge the mental and the emotional batteries. And I wanted to talk about this because you're great. You are so connected to the spiritual side of yourself. You're so clever and intelligent, and you've got all the science and the training.
Thanks, me hair. Smell it.
But you're also really, that's why I think that's why I connect with you on such a deep level, because you're not somebody who's this hippie, airy fairy, praise the fucking crystals and flash your flaps to the universe and everything's going to be brilliant. You're not that person wearing a caftan.
Do you know what? I was actually going to wear one.
That fucks up my pants.
I do like a caftan.
I know you do. But you also love your science.
Yes.
You love the neuroscience side of things, and you're full of amazing facts, and you've done loads of training. And I think that's why you are like, you're like the hippie, but for real people.
Yeah.
I love that.
I've actually been told that before. Yeah, it's more real. And more, it's because a lot of people think it's about and it's not. You can be normal and live your life and connect to yourself.
So how do you connect to yourself? How do you help your mental health? Because you've got a massive tool bag of stuff that you help your own mental health, and I wanted to share that for our listeners.
Thank you very much. Okay, will do. And can I just say, by the way, I am still a crank. So maybe I'm a lot better. I am a lot better. And there are so many tools out there, and I use a lot of tools. But yeah, I still have more moments where I ask the kids to brush the teeth. I've said this before, and I ask them, and then by the 5th time, it's like, brush your teeth. Have you brushed your teeth? Have you brushed your teeth? And it's like, and then I go, oh, that's not Claire. That's not what people think that you do. You're not a cranky mum. But yeah, but we have those situations. However, what I do now is I recognise when I feel triggered by something. So if something something really simple on Facebook, someone might make a comment about what's going on again in the world at the moment outside, and have a belief about what's going on, and say nasty things about politicians, and just really, and I notice it triggering me because I don't like people being called names. And I know, like you said, I like there's everybody's got their own story, and I don't like it when people push their beliefs on other people. So if I recognise something triggering me, whether that's people calling people names, whether it's I don't like being late for stuff, and I get really angry when I'm going to be late, and then now that I'm more aware, I used to take it out on everyone. Hurry up, we need to do that. And then I'd still be late, and then I'd be in a right mood. So I say to myself, okay, what is this telling me? Breathe. Stop a minute. Calm down. As in, calm down. And then, but literally, just breathe.
Yeah.
And then, okay, proceed. Now do what you need to do. Does it really matter if you are 5 minutes late? Does it really matter?
That goes back to what I was saying about the car breaking down. That's your attachment, usually, to the judgment of other people. Oh my goodness, what are they going to think if I'm late?
Yeah. And I'm going to let people down. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter. Does it really matter? No. So don't let it rob you from the present moment. Just, it is what it is. If you do break down, make a call, get the car, and you just have to wait. And that did happen to me on the M62 in February. I was on my way to a training event and the car broke down in the middle lane on the M62. Oh yeah, and I had to wait for someone to, and then they had to put cones around me. And if that had been me 10 years ago, it would have been pure drama. I don't know what to do. And I just said, it is what it is. And I just sat there and did what I needed to do. And because I was in a calm state of mind, picked up the phoned who I needed to phone. I checked, I could see that there was a number on the side. They said, we've seen you on the cameras, we're coming to get you. And then it was fine. It was, I can't go to the job. And because it took me, I was stuck on the motorway. But I was thinking to myself, God, if this had been me 10 years ago, I would have been in the middle of the lanes, just running across like a
You'd probably been in danger because you'd have been in a stress state and not thinking clearly. And,
and the biggest tool I can say for people to use is the breath. Because the breath...
talk us through that then. If somebody's listening right now and they might have, let's say, for example, they might be on a commute, they might have had a stressful morning or they might be at home doing the chores or whatever. How can somebody engage with the present moment with breathwork?
Okay. So the best one, and this is from yoga, what we taught in yoga, is abdominal breathing. So you can do it anywhere. You just sit up and you keep sitting up straight. Right. There we go. Head in line with spine. Okay. Crown of the head's lifted. And so that you're just nicely supported. And then you basically breathe in through your nose. And then as you breathe in, allow the breath to go into the pit of the stomach. Push the abdomen out like a balloon. So you feel like a bit fatty. And then you inhale, pull the stomach back in towards the spine, and then allow the breath to come out through the nose. That's the way we should breathe. People breathe. I'll practice that again now. So breathing in through the nose, into the pit of the stomach, allow the stomach to bloat out like a balloon. And then as you breathe out, just pull the stomach back in towards the spine and the breath comes out.
That does instantly make you feel calmer.
And when you look at babies when they're born, the bellies are like that when they breathe, aren't they? And that's the way we should breathe as human beings. But we don't. A lot of us breathe into our chest. So it's short, shallow breaths. So then the physiology of the body is out of balance. And the whole thing about breath work and loads of different breathing techniques, it brings the body back into homeostasis. So the chemicals and everything around the body, it brings both hemispheres, both sides of the brain into balance. And then it's all about connection. So there's the physical, chemical side of it, and then there's the spiritual side of it. And I think a lot of people think being spiritual is that woo-woo stuff, but the whole thing about breathwork and meditation and connecting to yourself, there's the science behind it in terms of brain scans now. It shows you parts of the brain that light up when you meditate and you do different meditations. And the corpus callosum grows, which is the bridge between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. Once that grows, that means that it's given you get more access to both sides of the brain, your logical brain and your heart. And that when you are faced with a problem like breaking down, or, your boss asks you for a last minute report, or the kids are doing your head in because they haven't brushed their teeth.
For the 27th time.
You've got more access to both sides of the brain to say, okay, how do I deal with this? So you're more present and you're more creative. So it takes you out of survival mode and it puts you into creative mode. So you are a creator. So then you're filled with more opportunities, you're filled with more solutions, and you're more present. And it's just... It makes sense. And this is something that's been around for tens of thousands of years. We've lost it because we've got busy doing stuff that we don't really need to do, even though we think it's important. But slowly but surely, I feel like things are changing and people are coming back to what is important to me. And you know what? I do need to look after myself, and I do need to breathe, and I do need to be in the present moment with loved ones instead of being out on a meal and being with all your family and everyone's like this on the phone. And I've done it myself.
Yeah, we've all done it. We've all
myself,
been guilty
and that's a habit.
It is a really bad habit.
And it's sad because they say now people are more lonely than ever before, and they're connecting to people all over the world on this,
on the phones,
and then they're disconnecting from people who are in the room with them. So it's about get rid of that for a bit and connect to you, and then you can connect to others.
So this is a podcast talking about mental health. You've talked about breath work, you've talked about getting rid of the phone. We know in 2020 in the UK, 1 in 5 people now are being reported as being depressed. Absolutely shocking statistics. I was very, very lucky to do a mental health first aider training course a couple of years ago. Did it as a 2-day thing. As somebody who always thought that depression and anxiety was made up and people were doing it for attention, years later to go and do that course and be completely empathetic and sympathetic to how debilitating mental health issues really are was incredible. And there's a disability scale, actually.
Yeah, talk us through that, because I've not heard of that until you'd told me about it.
So in my mental health first aid training course, there's a disability scale where it talks about, you know, like a heart attack is a really, you know, paralysis, spinal injuries. And actually the effect of depression on the disability scale is really close to physical ailments, spinal injuries, because... And there was a great example that was used in this course. Let's say you've got 2 people who each work in a similar role in a job. I'm going to call them Bob and Ben, right? Bob has a heart attack and is signed off work for 3 months. Ben's got depression and is signed off for 3 months. 3 months later, you go to the park and you see Bob with his family and you see Ben with his family. And what the trainer said in this, he asked us for our reactions. You know, what would you have said a few years ago? And actually it would have been, oh my God, Bob, you know, he's recovered from a heart attack. He's out in the park with his family. Amazing.
Yeah.
What do you say when you see Ben in the park who's been signed off with depression? What are you doing out? What are you supposed to be sick? Why are you not in work? Actually, what's to say that's not the first time that Ben's got out of bed in 90 days and managed to get himself dressed and go out. And that was a really good lesson that I learned on this mental health first aid training course. The way that we perceive depression and anxiety has to change. And unfortunately, until you've been in that position where you can't get out of bed and you are desperate, and in order to have to not do the school run, you try and crack your skull open. That was a pretty extreme reaction, and it definitely wasn't for attention like I used to think this mental health stuff was about. So I think we are becoming more open. A lot of people in our year of resetting in 2020 have unfortunately experienced poor mental health because of being isolated, a general collective global feeling of hopelessness, the worry of the future. And my wish for the future is that people are just more kind, and it's something that you talk about a lot. Your group on Facebook. Tell us the name of your group on Facebook.
Oh, the Successful Kind Set.
The Successful Kind Set. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And I know that that's really important to you, having a place where people can experience kindness away from all the crazy that's going on in the world. But to wrap up, what else would you prescribe in your knowledge, in your expertise? What would you say to somebody who might be listening to this right now and feeling the effects of depression and anxiety and feeling a bit hopeless and lost? And what do they do next? Where do they turn to? How can they get better? What would you say to them?
First things first is, if they can and they have someone that they love and they trust, or just someone that you know that you can go to, reach out to that person. If you haven't got anyone, by all means, I think I'm always available. And I always say this to people, I'm always here if you need to reach out. I can always help you and guide you to where you need to go, and I'll always listen. And then if you haven't got that, it's just to know that there are a lot of charities out there as well who deal with this stuff, but just to know that you're not on your own. And as soon as you open up and you come to a reality with that, because I do think some people don't know, but they're in denial. They don't know, and you cannot change anything. You can't make someone go to speak to someone. You can't do it. I've had people come to me for coaching and counselling, and it's been a husband saying, I want to pay for my wife to come for counselling, and I'm like, I'm all here, bring her to me and I'll listen. But if she doesn't want to open up, then you can't she has to want this. But the big thing is, please open up. Get into something like meditation. There's a lot of apps out there at the moment for that. There's a great one called Insight Timer. that I get my children to use when I'm not there. I use it sometimes, but I do my own meditation anyway, my own internal stuff. But really just connecting with yourself. And it's I mean, this is why the rest of the podcast that we're going to do will hopefully educate people on the first thing that you've got to do is get in touch with yourself and to see what you really want, what your purpose is, what you're here for, because everybody's here for a reason. We've all got these amazing gifts inside us, and some people have just not discovered them yet. But meditation, breathwork, and please reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And number one, get honest with yourself, which nicely wraps up this latest episode of the Honest to Gob podcast. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Gemma Ray.
And my name is Claire Morton.
You can find me on gemmaray.com, or on Facebook, I am Gemma Ray Life Unfiltered. What about you, Claire?
On Facebook, it's Claire Morton, and I've got my website is thepurpose-pusher.com.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.